Welcome in for Verticals Podcast, episode 134. 134. Week 7 college football upset alerts up plenty this weekend. I think a lot of folks are sort of sleeping on the upset potential here to a certain extent. A lot of games there's a lot of games that people aren't even talking about, which is bizarre to me because there's a lot to talk about. A lot of games that are not necessarily the marquee games that people are sort of ignoring. We'll talk about them here. Yes, I do have some thoughts on Bill Belichick and this whole situation going on in Chapel Hill. We'll go into that. Got some Marvel news that's a little bit old, but may as well talk about it. It's Thursday. We also have, to end the show, Bucs 49ers predictions. So if you're new here, first of all, welcome in. This is the For Verticals podcast. We do this show Tuesdays and Thursdays during the week around this time. Sometimes in the evenings we have to cover college football, Marvel, Star Wars news. As a fan of those sort of properties, we cover those sometimes, and then we also cover the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and that part of the NFL. But did a show twice a week on YouTube Live here, and then on Spotify. Like we post it either the day of, or maybe a couple days, or a day after. It's audio only, so there's no video or anything like that. So for those of you who listen on Spotify right now, you don't know what I look like. We just started doing the face cam a couple weeks ago, finally, after much deliberation, here in our home studio we have here in Jacksonville, Florida, high atop a windy and cloudy Jacksonville, Florida. Got a little nor'easter forming off the East Coast, bringing in some rain, and not the traditional afternoon thunderstorms that's long over now, the beginning of the summer. But we do this show twice a week. It's free of charge, not behind a paywall. I don't force you guys to give me money. That's not that type of show. It's free of charge. Just only if we ask you. Prayer hands here on YouTube. All we ask you to do is subscribe to the channel, like the streams, like the videos, and follow us on the platforms, right? YouTube, Spotify, X, Twitter. You know where to find us. For those of you who are returning viewers as well, make sure you subscribe and like the streams too while you're at it. Even on replays, make sure you like them. And also when we do our recap videos. Now, what's weird here is that this weekend, I may not be able to do the reaction, the little recap we do either next week or this weekend. I'm not sure yet, but we will finalize that at some point. So next Tuesday's show might be a sort of a combined show. We may have to have a really super long show here. Not trying to take that out of context, but so that's the one little programming note. But I think next week should be a normal week, I think, for the most part. And of course on our show, I mean, we don't miss any shows really. I mean, for the most of the times, if we have to miss a live show, we'll just do one pre-recorded. Now, of course, the only time we'll have to miss a show is if I have to have surgery at some point, which, it happens at some point, may happen at some point. But yeah, with the exception of anything medically, like surgery or anything like that, where, like, just God forbid, I won't be able to talk for a while, that's different. Then we can't have a show. I'll be active on Twitter and stuff, but no show, obviously, unless, if there's a surgery. But in terms of, like, travel and stuff like that, we'll usually pre-record stuff. No big deal. And I'm pretty sure the only time we have to have a situation like this, where we may not be able to do a traditional show, might be the week of Thanksgiving. So we may have a Tuesday show only, where we're just combine the normal Tuesday show and then like the upset alert show just stuffed into one. So that's guaranteed. The next show we may have to move some stuff around, but overall I think we should be okay going forward until then. Let's actually get into the show. You got a lot of things to talk about. We are going to talk about some games we discussed on Tuesday, particularly one, but there's also a lot of games we did not discuss on Tuesday. We're saving here for the upset alert. So that's the whole point of listening to the Thursday show, to learn about our thoughts on the other games, and we moved into the Thursday show for upset alerts. And on my notes here, I have the show labeled as 133. That's not true. It's 134. Week 7, college football upset alerts. We do this every single week, and how the scaling works here, how we do it. Instead of using numbers, we use colors like a traffic light. So green means no upset. Yellow means we're watching it. I mean, green means no upset where we're still watching it. Yellow means we're watching it and closely, maybe an upset brewing. Red means we think the upset is going to happen or is likely to happen. Not a guarantee, but just it's more likely to happen in that category. First game up here is, do you know who Ohio State's playing this weekend? Who do you think they're playing? Like Nebraska, like Minnesota, Maryland. They're playing at Illinois in Champaign. the Illibuck Trophy, that golden, I think, turtle, is finally back in college football after 7 years, I believe, 7+ years of no Illibuck Trophy on the line in Champaign. Big noon kickoff and whatnot. I guarantee you, a lot of folks, besides, after that game against Texas, have not watched Ohio State. I have for you. They are the most boring good team in America. They run the football, ball control, dominating the clock. Like Jeremiah Smith has been. He's shown up. He's making plays, but he's not been like a national story like all of us thought he would be. But that's not Ohio State this year. Ohio State this year is, again, ball control, good defense with Matt Patricia. Look, I was questioning him, and we know he was hired at the beginning of the year, and rightfully so, given it's an NFL guy coming into the college world. Doesn't always translate seamlessly. It has so far, and you haven't been able to pay for anything in terms of like any errors and stuff they may have made in games. You just haven't paid for it yet, at least defensively. But defensively, good so far. Offensively, good so far. But ever since that game against Texas, this is their biggest test so far. Now, Washington, last week or the week before, I thought was going to be a test for them. I thought they were going to get tested properly. I thought any flaws they had would get exposed properly. It did not happen. Then they played a bye week named Minnesota. They disposed of them pretty easily, 42-3. Now they go on the road. I had this in the yellow category. Now, the reason why it's in here is because now if you go on FanDuel, I believe the spread here, will do this for most of the games. Let's see here, Ohio State. It is Ohio State minus 14.5. So clearly a big number here. And of course, the way we would do this would be like, how the upset happened. How the upset would happen here is if Ohio State were to have their flaws and the things that, maybe they're not particularly clean at, get exposed properly here. That's how it'd have to happen. So like, maybe the offensive line gives out a couple of sacks, maybe the defense, gives up big plays and whatnot. Special teams errors, fumbles, interceptions. Obviously, you can't predict that, but that's how the upset would have to happen. And for Illinois, I think with them, the reason why I'm not too concerned here, but we're still watching it, and for the most part, it being, Ohio State's first big, at least road test against a major ranked opponent, and not to mention it's a rivalry game. I think Illinois is a team, though. I think I lost my train of thought there, but Illinois is a team, though. Again, if the upset were to happen here, Illinois is a team. Well, all the other stuff, of course, would have to happen, right? Ohio State being exposed, at least their flaws being exposed properly. Again, or at least on their side of things, would be, again, turnovers, errors on their own part. But can Illinois expose those properly? I don't know. Illinois as a team, again, like I was trying to say, their receivers are okay, but there's not one guy that, immediately pops off your screen and, it says, or at least it gives you the vibe of, yeah, that guy is a true number one. They don't have that. They have also have not been a very good pass defense. I think you saw that against Indiana. Now, granted, it's a little bit different because a lot of their guys have been hurt, but I think this game in a lot of ways does remind me of the Washington game where Illinois seems like a team that could expose Ohio State. And look, I fell into that trap a couple weeks ago. I'm not necessarily doing it here, but again, if you look at Illinois, yes, they do look like a team that could expose Ohio State. They have a good head coach, Brett Bielema, who is used to, coaching the Big Ten, going back to his days at Wisconsin. Well, all that is there. The home field advantage. It's a big new kickoff. Gus Johnson and Joel Klatt will be there. I just don't think the upset's happening here, but I am watching it. It is possible. It's in the yellow category. Now, a little fun fact here. The last time Ohio State lost to Illinois was, you may be asking yourself, when was that? The last time they lost to them was in 2007. That was, I believe, Juice Williams was a quarterback for Illinois. It was Ron Zook, who was the head coach. And Ohio State was also number one. I believe Illinois was not ranked, but they were a good team that year. So, I mean, little historical context, but I was on the road, by the way, in Columbus, not in Champaign. But yeah, it's happened before. It's been a while, though. It's been almost 20 years almost, but we'll see. We're watching that game. This one, we previewed this game on Monday or on a Tuesday. Bama at Missouri. It's in the red category. I do believe this will be a close game. The line, I believe, is still Bama minus 3.5. I believe so, yes. That line's perfect. I think this will be a competitive game. So that's in the red category. That one's probably the easiest red category game of the day. Or at least not the easiest one, but the one that everyone's probably the most aware of. Now, this one, I guarantee you, no one's paying attention to this game outside of maybe Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and Tallahassee, Florida. Florida State hosting Pitt. This one I'm very concerned about. Now, you may be asking yourself, well, Josh, why are you so concerned about this? Why are you, worried about a Pitt Florida State game? Shouldn't, Florida State get it right here? Well, you would think they would get it right. You would think that Florida State would use this game as a chance to, flex their muscles, sort of say, hey, the last couple of games, the Virginia game and the Miami game, we're not that bad. But here's the thing. Florida State over, and not even just Norvell era, it goes back to the Jimbo Fisher era and some of the Willie Taggart era. Florida State, and this is something that Bud Elliott over on Cover 3 and Nullcast has brought up, that Florida State has a tendency to do this to where they overlook these like mid-tier, lower-tier ACC teams as of this sort of staunchness to where, oh, we're better than you and we shouldn't, give 100% effort against, NC State or Pitt or Wake Forest. Well, they do that and then they end up losing these games. It doesn't happen a lot, but there's a good, decent enough sample size to where it is something that historically has happened before. Don't let that be you for Florida State. Do not let that be you. You are Florida State. I think we said this back in the spring and summer. A lot of folks said, up to including me, that them doing this, the whole overhaul, the changes on the staff, bringing in Tony White and Gus Malzahn and bringing in Tommy Castellanos. You didn't bring those guys in to win a national championship. Okay, you brought them in to save jobs. You brought them in to not lose to Virginia, which you already have, or to Pitt, or NC State, or to God knows who else. Do not let that be you. Do not lose this game. You cannot overlook Pitt. You cannot overlook any of these teams on the ACC schedule that are these mid-tier teams in Florida State. You cannot do it. Even Clemson now. Clemson, you can't overlook them either. So, and not to mention too, if Norvell, and this is something that Bud has also brought up as well on Cover 3 and Nullcast, that Norvell, during his time there, when his teams have gone into a funk, like 2021, 2022, I believe, was every year where they, and then of course last year, years where, or at least at times where they have lost a large times that they have lost a large number of games. Like, for example, in 2022, remember they started out like 4-0, I believe, and they lost like 3 straight. Last year they lost like 7 straight. So there's been a trend to where Norvell has had a bad time of getting his teams right after one or multiple losses. You cannot let that happen. You cannot let that happen. But I'm still scared here. And until I see it happen, I don't believe they can do it. So this one I am very scared of. I'm very scared of, not to mention Pitt made the quarterback change. Excuse me. The almost once every other show burp. Pitt made the quarterback change. I believe last week they blew out Boston College. So, as people say, or a lot of folks in the industry say, in terms of betting, you like to bet against, or you like to bet with, I think, that's the right term, betting with backup quarterbacks. Pitt has one that, so far pretty good. So this one I am concerned about because of the whole, Norvell not having, or at least not showing the ability to get his team back after a loss or multiple losses. The fact that Florida State, again, has had this tendency to be, very dismissive, if you will, as a program towards these other middling ACC teams and end up beating you anyway. So it's like almost like kind of becomes like a meme. So again, do not let that be you. Don't lose to Pitt. But I'm still concerned. Clearly. These next 2 games here, we're watching these games. These are, I'll just tell you up front, they're in the green category. But first one here, who do you think Ole Miss is playing this weekend? Who do you think they're playing? Like, I don't know, Vanderbilt, Arkansas. Well, we've already played them. Mississippi. They play Mississippi State later on. Like, who do you think they're playing? Like, South Carolina, Kentucky. They're playing an out-conference game against Washington State. Yeah, I get it. This late in the year, like, what? This late in the year? The line on this game from FanDuel, I believe, is over 20. Yeah, it's like 32 points. So, not concerned here, but I mean, look, Washington State, they're like Washington State and Oregon State, they're uniquely bad. Like, I'm not saying they're like worse than most G5 teams, but they kind of are. worse than most G5 teams. Like I believe Washington State, if I do the research here, I mean they kept it close with Washington, but that's a rivalry game and the dynamics are a little bit different. Given that Ohio State game was on tap, but you still you got blown out. Washington State, I believe so they started 3-0. Like they almost lost to a FCS team, but that's actually a rivalry game, which is kind of weird. Still taking a rare FCS rivalry. You beat San Diego State, cool, but this is so bad. So they lost to Washington. They gave up 59 points, but they also did the same thing the previous week, losing 59-10 to North Texas. Let me repeat myself: not Texas A&M, not Texas State. It was actually a good G5 team. Not, Texas Tech, North Texas. The North Texas Mean Green. I believe that's who they are, right? I think that's who they are. Yeah, the Mean Green. They lost to them. Now, look, they are 5-0 in the American Conference, and it's like, them, like Navy and Memphis are undefeated. But it's North Texas, though. Ugh. So, prayer hands again for Washington State. I think they are going to get it's going to be a TVMA special there in Oxford. So if you're going to that game, have fun. This next one, NC State, Notre Dame. This was interesting to me. So, of course, as you know, I don't know why I just said no twice there, but Notre Dame, of course, they play the ACC, like, their little weird agreement thing they have. But this game, I'm watching it, it's one of those games where you're not paying attention to it. You see it on, like, the bottom line of, like, ESPN or whatever. You go, oh, yeah, cool. NC State, Notre Dame. May check on it. It's on NBC as usual. I think it may be also on Peacock. The line on that one is 22.5. We're watching it. It's in the green. I'm not too concerned. I think NC State, at least athletically, doesn't match up well to them. But here's the thing, though. Notre Dame can be had on defensively. We saw that against Texas A&M. We saw that against Miami. So they're not perfectly clean defensively. Nor not even in the Arkansas game. I grant you that was a blowout, but even there was opportunities to be had against that Notre Dame defense. We'll see if NC State. We'll see. Dave Doran, sort of like the model of consistency in the ACC for the most part. We're watching that game. We're watching that one. But it's in the green category, so we're not too concerned about it. Next one, though, I am a little bit more concerned about. Who do you think Georgia Tech plays this weekend? Who do you think they're playing? Boston College, Wake Forest? They've already played them, though. They're playing Virginia Tech, the battle of the Techs here. I'm concerned here. Now, the only reason why I'm concerned here is because it is a rivalry game. Georgia Tech, for the most part, has had a very, besides the Clemson game and, I guess until the Georgia game, it was in between that game, Georgia and the Clemson game weeks ago, Georgia Tech has not been tested yet, or at least tested in a sense to where they've been exposed yet. Could they be exposed here? If Kyron Drones, Phil Montgomery's the interim coach there. It's a weird thing with these interim coaches. It's a weird thing. Josh Pitt has said this before multiple times where it's either backup quarterbacks or interim coaches to where when you have that happen where it's like a quarterback change in the middle of the season or a head coaching change, if you have this thing happen or this weird mentality happens where you realize, oh, we have an interim coach or a new quarterback. That means we have to sort of step up our level of play as a team. And I think for Virginia Tech, it being a rivalry game, it's a team in Georgia Tech that's feeling pretty good about themselves. That had that scare against Wake Forest a couple weeks ago. I believe they were off this past week. Things can happen, right? These teams of interim coaches, go back to 2022 with Auburn with Carnell Williams, right? They upset Texas A&M. Granted, that wasn't a good A&M team, but, as an example of an interim coach with a, in the middle of the season, and a team sort of plays up to their standard a little bit. I wonder if that was Virginia Tech. Now, if it was at home, if it was the opposite, if this was not in Atlanta, I would be way more concerned about this game. But since it's at home, it's you're rested. I'm not too concerned, but I am certainly watching it with interest, and it's in the yellow category. So now this one, I guarantee you, no one outside of Fayetteville, Arkansas, or what am I blanking on? Tennessee, Knoxville. Yeah, I mean, outside of Fayetteville, Arkansas, Knoxville, Tennessee, no one's talking about it. It's Arkansas going on the road at Tennessee. Both of these teams are off a bye. They didn't play last week, of course. Arkansas, the coaching change of Sam Pittman, and it is the first game since 2011, since the Sugar Bowl. Well, I guess or the last game in terms of the entire an entire season. Now, technically, his last game as a head coach at Arkansas was against the SEC team was the LSU game. But in general, the last time we saw one Robert Patrick Petrino on the sidelines as in a Arkansas polo or whatever in Arkansas gear as a head coach or acting in this case was 2011 in the not the Sugar Bowl, the Cotton Bowl. Sugar Bowl was the year before. The Cotton Bowl against, I believe, Kansas State. They won that game. That was his last game as a head coach at Arkansas. Now he's back. I am very interested here. Now, again, like I just mentioned with Virginia Tech, same thing applies with Arkansas, right? This thing we have interim coaches or backup quarterbacks. Your level of your level of playing goes up, knowing that you have to have more of a burden because it's an interim coach, right? You want to impress them. You want to. It's sort of a kind of like a job interview type thing where you have to sort of raise your sort of level of ability. With the interim coach, you have to, hold yourself to a different standard because it's an interim coach, and you're trying to, impress him and maybe have an opportunity to stay on the roster in the next year. So that's kind of what I'm looking for here with Arkansas going on the road to Tennessee. So the line on this game, I believe, if I look this up, let's see here, Tennessee, Arkansas, it's 12.5 Tennessee. It's, I believe, a 4 o'clock on SEC Network. So it's going on during a time where we have I believe it's the OU Texas going on at the same time. You have the Indiana Oregon games. This will be sort of forgotten, but folks, I believe, will watch it because it's Bobby Petrino back. I'm concerned here. I'm actually concerned. I mean, if you're Tennessee, yes, from your side of things, on your side of things, I mean, it's a revenge game. I think this team's a little bit better, or at least profiling better than last year's team, at least offensively. But defensively for Tennessee, they can be had on. Syracuse did it. Mississippi State did it. Georgia did it. Can Arkansas do it? With Bobby Petrino calling the plays, and I grant you, when Bobby Petrino has been calling the plays, it's been pointed out, they've not been good offensively in the last 6 quarters or whatever. So it's not been so him being the interim coach, while it's funny and the memes and stuff, while that's great that he is there and he's shepherding this team, his offense over the last six quarters or so has not been that great. So I don't know what you're going to get here. Are you going to get an inspired performance? Taylor Green goes off and he looks like Lamar Jackson. He throws for over 100 yards. He runs for over 100 yards, and you're able to upset Tennessee and sort of get things going there in Fayetteville. Or does Tennessee show up? It's a revenge spot. They're rested as well because both these teams are off a bye, and they dispose of Arkansas and they take care of business. Both those things are on the table here. I think the former, not the latter, is more likely here. I do think Tennessee could be in some trouble here again, especially with defense on their defense, right? I brought this up before again just a few minutes ago. Georgia, they threw on them. Syracuse, even though in a loss, and granted this is when Angeli was still the starter, they threw on them. So did Mississippi State. Knowing Bobby Petrino and the way he's sort of evolved offensively, he's going to want to throw the football around. He's going to air it out. I think he's one more loose now, not having, to answer to Sam Pittman and he being the head guy again. So this one is in the code red category. I'm very concerned here. You can make all the jokes you want to about Petrino being back, and look, we'll see if that motorcycle ride heading back to Fayetteville is any good. So more here. This one, no one's really talking about this one either. So Kansas is playing Texas Tech. This line, I believe, if I look at it, FanDuel, I believe it's quite short, given it's a top 10 team. Actually, no, it's not. It's 14.5, but much like these other teams you brought up, Texas Tech kind of fits in the same category. Have they been tested properly yet? Have they been exposed yet? Because every single team in college football right now, they have flaws. Even Ohio State, even any these undefeated teams still left, they have flaws. Texas Tech has flaws. Have they been exposed yet properly? No. Could they be exposed properly this weekend? I think maybe. It's in the yellow category. This Kansas game, I think maybe. Jalen Daniels has to be the key here. I mean, they can score points Kansas game with Lance Leipold as the head coach. They've also, again, under his regime there and at KU, they've done this before. They've upset top 10 teams before. They did it with, or at least the bigger brands in the Big 12 either current or former. Like so, for example, like OU, they beat them a couple years ago as a top 10 team, and OU in Lincoln Riley's final year, they've been in Texas before. They've been competitive with other teams, so this one I'm concerned about. I'm not totally concerned. It's in the yellow category, but this one wouldn't shock me. 14.5. That's kind of a big number there. If I were to pick this game and against the spread, I would pick Kansas to cover here. Anything over a touchdown, I would totally favor Kansas to cover in. So that one I'm concerned about. This next one I'm also concerned about. Maybe didn't do a preview on this, but look, I mean, we were this past Tuesday's show was pretty stuffed up with game previews, but yes, we're not ignoring this one. Michigan at USC. Now, if you're to pick this game, I'm picking Michigan to win. I just feel like they're a more physical team. USC, at least so far, even though I think they've improved defensively, they have not shown to be very physical yet, at least for a long period of time in the game, right? The sequence against Illinois when they came back, won the game, that to me has a lot of red flags in that one. Although for USC, it is a revenge spot. It is at home. It's an opportunity to sort of package this as a huge win for Lincoln Riley since taking over, or at least being in the Big Ten. I don't see it for Michigan. I believe Michigan, I have to look at the spread here. I believe it is a tight spread. Let's see here. USC. It is, yes, 7.5. I mean, I think I'm going to take, if I were to bet here, actually, no, that's a different game involving USC down the road. Okay, yeah, so it's 2.5. And actually, USC is the favorite, actually. Forgot that. I kind of feel like the wrong team's favorite here. Again, because of the physicality thing, Michigan still having that same brand, if you will, of football they're still playing because the receivers suck. I just feel like Michigan is in a spot here to flex their muscles, I think. I just don't know if USC can do it yet, at least be physical against the top teams. Now, against the lower tier teams, I think they can do it. We haven't seen them do it yet. So I'm going to say no. I think Michigan does win. But I'll just say here, look, it's a spot for USC. It's a revenge opportunity. It's a chance for Lincoln Riley to get finally a big win against a prominent Big Ten team. So I'm just putting it out there. Again, it wouldn't surprise me if USC wins here, but I am going Michigan. I think their physicality, that's the mismatch here, their physicality of USC. But look, I totally understand why USC is the favorite here. I understand that. This next game, it's right here, actually. So I guarantee you no one's talking about this game. South Carolina going to LSU. May I remind you, it is October, right? The calendar on my computer, on my iPad here, it says October 9th. So it is October, so we have to have this conversation here. Now, for those of you who are new here, or at least new to this term, October, I'm not the one who came up with it. It's someone else did. I know Josh Pitt has used it a lot over the years, but October is a month, being October, and of course, South Carolina, the mascot Gamecocks, combine the two, you get that. But what the month really stands for is we've seen this in the past where South Carolina end this month, they have pulled off major upsets. I think go back to a number of years ago when they beat Auburn in 2020. That's one example. There's been several examples. Last year, Grant Shield it was after October was over with, but it was around October, late October, early November, like when they beat Texas A&M. So it has happened before. So that's why we're all, like me, I'm excited about this month because, it being October, we assume, or at least we're hoping that South Carolina can pull off a major upset. They have opportunities to do it. They have multiple opportunities to do it. Which one is it going to be? They play LSU on the road. Now, it is on the road. I believe LSU, according to FanDuel, is a, 8.5-point favorite here. So they're a little bit over a touchdown favorite. Makes sense to me. However, again, it is October. South Carolina, I think offensively, at least with Sellers, he's playing better now. I will grant you this. The mismatch here, at least of the South Carolina receivers versus the LSU defense, total mismatch here. Total mismatch. I mean, South Carolina has the worst receiving room in the SEC, even worse than Vanderbilt and Mississippi State. They're just bad. Besides Nick Harbor, who else out there you really trust on the Gamecocks receiving room? No one, right? So this one, I think, is a mismatch, at least defensively. Now, offensively for LSU, that's my concern here, right? With the whole, Garrett Nussmeier thing. Is he healthy yet? Is he not? Can they even run the football? Can they get those receivers involved? Now, we'll say this, and I think this is something that the guys on Cover 3 brought up yesterday. I think Bud brought it up. Bud Elliott did. Is what if LSU were to lose this game? And we've talked about Auburn. We've talked about we are going to talk about this whole Bill Belichick thing, what's going on with him. But talked about it with Auburn too, right? If Auburn loses this week, and I fully expect that a regime change, meaning Hugh Freeze getting fired, could potentially happen in between this coming up Sunday and until probably the end of the regular season. It's going to happen. Like I said before, I have no doubt that how the season finishes up with Auburn, I do expect there will be a regime change there. But what if LSU loses to South Carolina? I agree with Bud. I think if they lose, don't be surprised on Sunday if you hear whispers of, hey, something could be happening with Brian Kelly. I'm not saying it's going to happen. Like I'm not like advocating for it, but look, if they lose, I guarantee you there's going to be a lot of folks rooting for a regime change here. And they start hearing like the drums beating for it. I think it's going to get really toxic if they do lose. So if you're LSU and your best interest is to win here, so if you're Brian Kelly and them, don't lose. Okay, don't let yourself be a victim of Cocktober. Okay, just don't let that happen. Don't let that be you. But for South Carolina, rubbing your hands together. I believe they're off a bye too, so you're rested. I think LSU's off a bye as well. I think, but again, it is Cocktober again. Just think about it in your head here. What happens if LSU loses a game? Again, I unfortunately believe there will be a lot of chanting, if you will, on across LSU Nation for regime change, and I do believe that conversation might actually get pretty serious starting Sunday if they were to lose. So we're watching that one just for the vibes thing. So, and then the last one here, we've been going for almost 30 minutes here. Actually at 30 minutes. Last one here. I know this is a long upset alert list, but trust me, it's loaded this week. Last one. Who do you think BYU is playing this week? Who do you think they're playing? They're playing Arizona on the road. The line on this game, by the way, if you're curious, is BYU. Actually, before I give it to you, guess. Just think to yourself. Guess, what is the line here of BYU? Top 25, undefeated. What do you think the line is? Is like BYU minus 14.5, 20.5, $1.5 million. Is BYU minus 1.5? So what Vegas is telling you on a neutral field, Arizona and BYU are about the same team. So if you're a BYU fan, I'm kind of concerned here, low-key concerned here, to the point where I'm actually picking Arizona to win the game outright. I think the wrong team's favored. I think Arizona, in some ways, projects pretty well against BYU. I think BYU has been sort of living on borrowed time, if you will. I think they're going to lose. Now, look, this is not me hating on BYU. This is not me hating on Kalani Sitake or that whole entire staff there. It's a good staff, right? But much like last year, I just kind of feel like they've been sort of benefiting off of a fairly workable schedule. And look, that's good, right? You're playing your schedule. I'm not criticizing you playing your schedule, but that's the truth, though. You are playing your schedule, and you have not been tested properly. You have not been exposed properly. I think Arizona can do it. I think they will do it. I think they win the game outright. That's probably, out of all these games here, this is the one I feel the most confident about. I'm too including the USC game where I could see USC winning that game, though I am picking Michigan to win the game outright. Same with South Carolina and LSU. I think there's a real threat here that South Carolina can win the game outright. I'm not picking them to, but this one, I think BYU is living on borrowed time here. I just think that they are going to lose, and I think it starts this week, and I think they do lose to Arizona. I think the wrong team's favored here, albeit it's a very short line. So before we move on to this Avengers news, and we'll get on to the Bill Belichick stuff, that's probably what most of you are here for. I guarantee you that's where most of you are logging on here to, watch, or at least to listen to my thoughts on. Get some water real quick. Then we'll be back. Because, that upset alert segment lasts like 30 minutes. It's really long. Insanely long. But, hey, that's what the show's for, right? That's what Thursdays is for. So we're going to mute on YouTube here, and I'll be back here in just a moment. By the way, the black water bottle here on YouTube today, not the water bottle with the alma mater stuff on there. My water bottle I used a couple days ago. That's from the school I went to, being UNF here in Jacksonville. If you guys didn't notice. So we haven't talked a lot about Marvel lately. It's been a lot of college football, which makes sense. It's fall. But there's a lot of chatter about Avengers Doomsday. They recently wrapped shooting. There's a lot of, you know, discussion about, who from the original Fox X-Men are coming back, which actors are coming back. And there's a lot of, by the way, there's a lot of rumors about who and who's not coming back. Unless it's not from someone who I trust or who is a trusted source, like, Daniel RPK or any of these Twitter X scoopers like Alex Perez. Unless it's from coming from them, I would be very cautious about it. There's been a lot of discussion about a certain someone not returning, even though I've said it's not likely they were going to return, but folks are saying it's confirmed they aren't returning. It's not been confirmed yet, guys. It's not a guarantee that certain people aren't coming back. We don't know for sure. So I'm just putting it out there. There's been a lot of rumors and speculation about who and who not is coming back. Just be careful of what you're hearing, okay? But as for Doomsday, the movie itself, the trailer, there's a lot of talking, if you will, amongst like the scooper community about when the trailer is going to come out. A lot of folks are saying around the Super Bowl. Folks are saying probably around like March, probably, because, remember, they have Spider-Man Brand New Day coming out in July, so you would imagine they would try to promote that first. But the rumor is, the current thinking is that the first Doomsday look, Avengers Doomsday look, will probably be attached with the new Avatar movie, not the anime show. It's the Avatar, James Cameron's Avatar, the blue people. I forget their names. I watched the original, the first movie, back when I was in like elementary school. I thought it was kind of boring. Visually great, but boring movie. But anyway, so the new Avatar movie, that's Avatar. Excuse me, I can't say it properly going fast. But so the new James Cameron Avatar movie, so it's coming out in December. The rumor is that the first look will be attached to that movie. The first look at Avengers Doomsday will be attached there. So do I believe it? Is it real? Probably. I would imagine. Now, usually putting a trailer out a whole year in advance, it's pretty rare. Like, the only times you've seen it happen before is like, I think with like Christopher Nolan's new movie, I forget it's called, like The Odyssey, I believe. That first trailer came out like a year and a half before it came out, or the movie's coming out next summer. I believe the Star Wars sequel movies did the same thing. Like, a trailer was released like a year before the movie came out, or close to a year. Like, for example, The Force Awakens is the same thing. It was like that Thanksgiving, a trailer was put out like 13 months before the movie came out. So it's very rare for this to happen. But I think for Marvel here doing this, if this is true, putting it out literally a year before, never burp there, a year before the film comes out, and sort of getting that promotion, or at least getting that marketing machine started early, I think it's probably the right way to go here. Because of where the MCU's been at, where it's, been sort of on shaky ground, you're sort of, I'm not saying you're losing the core audience, but you're starting to lose the casuals. I mean, look, we can go talk about ad nauseum to where, at least at where Marvel's at right now. I still have faith that this could be a good movie, but I think to at least get folks talking about it, get the hype machine going, I actually think doing this, at least putting this out early, I actually think it's appropriate here. I think they will do it. I'll be a little bit surprised if they don't. Now, of course, we can have enough time to speculate what will be in the trailer, but just broadly, I think we will get our first look at Robert Downey Jr. as Dr. Doom. Do I think we'll see some of the X-Men characters? I think so. Will we see all of them, including some of the rumored ones? No, I don't think we're going to see all of them. I think we'll see maybe a handful. So, yeah, I think it'll come out in December with Avatar, the next Avatar film. Yes, I think it will. But, that happened last week. Didn't talk about it because we were talking about a lot of college football. But, yes, I saw the news on that. Yes, I do believe that is probably true, and that I would be surprised if it did not happen. All right. Now, we can finally get this Bill Belichick stuff. So, if you've been living under a rock, actually, let me get some more water here real quick, because I feel like we're going to be talking about this Belichick thing for a little bit, at least for a good while. So, get on YouTube, and we're going to mute on YouTube, and we'll, just hang on here. Your audio's not cutting out on Spotify. It's just for getting water. So, we'll be back here in just a moment. Okay. Actually, before we get to the Belichick stuff, again, I guess those were about 40 minutes in. Again, be sure, if you are on YouTube, Spotify, make sure you subscribe. Okay, subscribe. Like the streams on YouTube, like the videos on YouTube. Leave a comment as well. And same thing on Spotify. Give us a 5-star rating on there. Helps us out big time. Again, this show is not behind a paywall. It's not behind, any, it's not on a streaming service, obviously. It's completely free of charge. It is all this information that we have in my brain here, I'm putting here on YouTube. It's all free and available to you with no cost at all. So if you want to keep it that way, subscribe. You continue to watch as well. Okay. Bill Belichick. Oh, boy. So, where do I begin here? So if you've been living under a rock, there's a lot of news about Bill Belichick and his current situation with UNC. So you guys know when he was hired back about almost a year now, he was hired in December. You guys know my feelings on Bill Belichick when he was hired. I thought it was an interesting hire. It's Bill Belichick. It's the name of Bill Belichick. It's the aura, if you will, of Bill Belichick. Though at the same time, while I respect him as an NFL coach, clearly, I had my reservations about him. I had my sort of nervousness about, how was he going to translate to college? Was this whole, 33rd NFL team going to work? How was the process going to be like? What was, the modus operandi going to be like? How was the team going to be structured and whatnot? I thought those were valid concerns. I thought those were valid things to be, worried about. And, as he sort of went along, throughout spring and summer, of course, he had the whole girlfriend thing. We didn't really touch on it here. It's kind of like whatever. It's a distraction, but let's just get to the season and see what happens. Well, the season has come, and maybe come was not the right word, but the season is here. It's arrived, and we have seen them lose 48-14 to TCU, 34-9 to Central Florida, UCF. And they also got blown out by Clemson at home. You saw the stadium there get empty out at the start of the second half. So every single game they've played against a team of a pulse, not named Charlotte and I think Richmond, FCS team, they've looked completely lost. I believe they have scored like a grand total of like 30 points combined in those 3 games, which is like the definition of insanity. So what has since happened over this past week, and you're on a bye this week, and they get Cal on the road next week on Friday. What has since come out from the folks, well, before the 247 stuff came out yesterday, we were hearing rumblings about, disgruntled parents and players being mad and whatnot. And, usually you don't hear that stuff when a team's winning. Because, look, I actually, we'll kind of venture back to that. But, yes, you sort of started to hear a lot of that stuff percolate, on Monday. But then it got really real yesterday. So apparently there was, reporting from the folks over on the Tar Heels 247 site, like a lot of stuff about, potential reduced buyout situations, and both parties aren't happy with each other. Players are like selling tickets to like friends and people not related to them, and they're getting in trouble. Like a staffer was recently like on suspension. So, and not to mention too, there's a lot of, quote unquote in-save violations and stuff like that, like recruiting violations. So that's all happening. So with all that stuff around, right? With all that stuff being thrown out there into the ether, my sort of take on this whole situation, Bill Belichick, the entire thing, right? From the hiring process to the whole Jordan Hudson stuff to where we are now. And that's a quote that Josh Pitt put out earlier, or we sort of touched on this on Monday, but not as much. And I sort of, by the way, the reason why we touched on Monday, or not Monday, the reason why we touched on it on Tuesday was because I had a feeling something was going to happen this week, given it was a bye week. So I was sort of preparing ourselves for this. But since we're here, sort of going to repeat what I said on Tuesday a little bit, sort of a different spin on it. Sort of to kind of paraphrase what Josh Pate said on Twitter, and I'm sure he'll repeat this probably on his show tonight, as I'm assuming he'll talk about it. The thing I have about this North Carolina thing, the best way I can sort of wrap it all up is into one question. Is North Carolina doing this in their best interest? So as UNC, are they going to act in the best interest of their football program, or are they doing it to sort of in the best interest of Bill Belichick's ego and legacy? That's the thing. That's the best way I can sort of describe it. Is UNC going to act in their best interest of their football program, or in Bill Belichick's ego and legacy? Are they going to? It sort of seems like, based on things we are hearing from very credible people, it sounds like the balls are on motion for a regime change to happen. That's the best way I can sort of get out of this. A regime change is going to happen, and it's going to be sort of at least UNC getting out of it in terms of like getting out of the buyout, right? So you're hearing like the NCAA violation stuff. You're hearing about Belichick and folks around him sort of negotiating a reduced buyout, and to where both parties are just going to part ways with each other, and he resigns. I mean, either way, it's not good. I mean, it's not good in terms of where the season is going. But yeah, I think that's the best way I can describe it, right? Is UNC going to act in their best interest of their football program, or in Bill Belichick's, or for Bill Belichick's ego and legacy? That's again the way I can sort of describe it. But I guess going back to the whole like NCAA stuff and the whole violation stuff and the reduced buyout, of course that's a tactic, right? To get your way out of your buyout, not paying money. So essentially, essentially what UNC is trying to do here is that they're trying to create. There's two options here where they can go here to get him out. Either A, you talk to him, and I think that's what's been being reported. It's not necessarily what's actually happening. I believe what's being reported is two options here. The one option is you get him to reduce his buyout. You meet at him, sort of halfway, and say, "Hey, look, we're not happy. You're not happy. Let's end this. Let's reduce your buyout. Is that okay? Cool, good." And that's where we don't get lawyers involved necessarily. It's ends pretty cleanly. Or the second option is the nuclear option, which is the Jeremy Pruitt protocol. Which, if you don't remember, Jeremy Pruitt at Tennessee when he was there, and granted, the on the field stuff was not great, and he was probably on his way to get fired anyway, based on the on the field stuff, the on the field performance, if you will. But why Tennessee fired him was both the on the field stuff, Jeremy Pruitt, the on the field product, and also using the excuse of NCAA violations. And the NCAA violations, if you remember, when Tennessee fired Pruitt, were not necessarily like SMU level scandal stuff, like where like a death penalty is warranted. It was like the silly stuff where it's like, oh, you're doing this and you caught yourself doing it. So essentially, the other option here for UNC, if they really want to get rid of him, by any means necessary, I guess. So the other option here is you essentially fabricate an NCAA violation, or at least turn yourself in on violations that otherwise you would not be caught for. And that's the way you get out of it. And then that's where, again, lawyers get involved and it gets really messy. So that's the worst of the two options. I think the option that I think a lot of folks would prefer is the mutual parting of ways. He resigns, you reduce your buyout, everyone's singing Kumbaya, and we get out of it. But the bottom line is that it's clear there will be a regime change. Hell or high water, there will be a regime change, and he's not back next year. I can confidently say that. So with all that being said, what lessons are learned here? Like what lessons can you learn from this whole situation? Well, two things. One, the second one is a little bit different, but the first one is for sort of the broad scope of college football, and this one is sort of for, or at least sort of tied to the fact that a lot of us in the industry have been thinking about that there will be a massive overturn of head coaches, right? Meaning that we're expecting, at least in the industry and people like me, podcasters, and who cover college football a lot, are expecting a major turnover in coaches, meaning a lot of guys getting fired. And look, I'm not someone who's like advocating for guys to get fired. You guys know that. I'm very rarely do I, cheer people to get fired. But let's not lie to ourselves here. We are expecting that there will be a lot of coaches who will be fired, right? Hugh Freeze at Auburn, Brian Kelly's on that list for sure. Sam Pittman's already been let go. Brent Pry's already been let go. Foster at UCLA has been fired already. So you've already had a number of coaching jobs or coaching searches get started. More is coming. Okay, there will be more happening here. And unfortunately, a lot of them are going to be in the SEC in particular because they didn't have a lot fired last year. So that means traditionally an active coaching season the year after. It's based on the way the world works. So this little lesson here, or at least it's not like a lesson, but it's just a sort of caution here for anyone who's listening to this show, whether you're an administrator, a fan, in any of these schools where a regime change might be happening or in the process of happening soon. Just make sure you understand this. When you're hiring coaches, when you're making these decisions, when hiring coaches, to those making the decisions, you need to act you need to act in the best interest of your football program, not in the interest of one person or a group of people. Because what happened with North Carolina is that when Bill Belichick was being, or at least when they were having their coaching search last year, right? You had this split camp situation where you had Bubba Cunningham, the AD, who did not want Bill Belichick. That was not his idea. His idea was to go get like Matt Campbell or John Summerall. That was his idea, and that's the idea I would, if I were a fan of UNC, I would much prefer that route versus going and getting a guy who has no college experience whatsoever and is older than Mac Brown, who was old enough to begin with. Not, I think it's Mac Brown, but you were hiring a 70-year-old plus coach to replace a 70-year-old plus coach. So again, for when you're hiring coaches, those making the decision need to act in the best interest of their football program, not in the interest of one person or a group of people. In this case, for Bill Belichick, a rogue faction of boosters, and rogue, not the X-Men character, rogue in terms of a group of boosters who went a certain direction and sort of hijacked the coaching hiring and said, no, we're hiring our guy, and our guy's going to be the guy that we get. And who's our guy? We're going to try Bill Belichick because he wants to, dip his toes into college football, and he wants to get back into coaching and sort of secure his legacy. That's not the way you should run your football program. That's not the way you should do it. You should be running it in the best interest of your program, not a certain person or a group of people. I don't know why it's so hard for folks to get that. I think North Carolina, it was an example of that last year, and I think they're reaping the consequences of that, which is you hired a guy who is egotistical and is not a college football guy. And you're seeing that happen, and not to mention the whole Jordan Hudson stuff and that that 60 Minutes interview was a total disaster. That's part of it. But the on-field stuff not helping either. And that's even more of a problem in terms of generating revenue and, just stuff like that, right? Just the whole business side of it, it's being heavily impacted here as well. And that, so again, just in general, I mean, again, when you're hiring coaches, again, I cannot say this enough. When you're hiring coaches, those making the decision need to act in the best interest of their football program, not in the interest of one person or a group of people. Period. End of story. And the last lesson that can be learned here is the NFL is not the same as college football. It is not the same. Okay, I cannot tell you how many times I've seen people since Belichick was hired until now saying, "Oh, well, Belichick came at the right time because the NFL or college football is now the NFL." Well, that might be true for certain things in terms of but it's not though. Like, for example, the structures of the sport is not organized. It's not. It's a complete mess. Like, you have the month of December is a total disaster, and you have the transfer portal stuff and this and that and the other. Where in the NFL you have structure. There is no structure in college football, and no NIL and transfer portal is not free agency and paying guys money, and or it's not the same. And it's not even just that. It's like the little things like practice times, right? With college football, now, granted, no one really follows this to a T, but there are guidelines in place where you can't have guys practice for more than a certain amount of hours a week. And apparently that's been happening at UNC and also just other things. But yes, the NFL is not college football. So just because you're hiring an NFL guy, and look, Arizona State, we're on the same thing too, right? With hiring Herb Edwards. Herb Edwards had zero experience in college football. He gets popped into Arizona State. Yes, everyone will tell you, well, they had good wins, right? I don't care. He inherited a roster. He inherited a ready-made product that was left over by, I think, Todd Graham, right? He was the outgoing coach. That was a ready-made situation for him. So he was winning with guys that he did not recruit. There was no transfer portal, and there was no ability for players to leave after the coach got fired. So he inherited a good situation. As you saw towards the end of his tenure, Herm Edwards at Arizona State, that place was a complete joke. Not including the COVID stuff. Okay, the whole violation thing, that's different. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about procedurally and operationally. It was a total disaster. Don't ask me about it. Go listen to Josh Pate's segments back like 2 years ago. Like, he was pretty vocal about it. So I trust him. So I firmly believe that place was a total joke behind the scenes from an organizational standpoint. Nothing against Herm Edwards, nothing against Bill Belichick, but it seems like Belichick and Herm Edwards here did not understand the structure of keeping things organized in college football. They clearly didn't understand it. And now both UNC and Arizona State back in the day had to reap the consequences of it. Now for UNC, if Belichick is fired now or later down the road, regardless, obviously he won't be back next year. If you're making a hire this year, again, please, 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 do not hire someone in the interest of one person or a group of people. Do it for your program. And do make sure you hire the right person qualified to lead that program that knows college football. Don't go hire some dopey NFL guy who has no experience in college football. And don't say, oh, well, Nick Saban had experience in the NFL. Buddy, he coached in college football for 15 years at combined the LSU and Michigan State and Toledo. That's bull crap. I don't want to hear it. Hire someone who has college experience. Don't tell me, oh, go hire, Sean McVay or go hire John Gruden. John Gruden has zero college football experience, okay? Has zero. Now, I'm not saying he would be interested in the job, yes, but no, North Carolina's not doing that, obviously, as a lot of folks do say in the college football industry. A lot of times when you're hiring coaches or you're making a hire, you have a tendency to go the opposite direction of where you just went. So no John Gruden, no Sean McVay, no NFL coach, no. Hire someone with experience and hire someone who is a qualified college football head coach that can actually operate a college football program. Okay, go look at Arizona State, right? You have Herm Edwards, bring Kelly Dunningham, who's an actual adult and can actually operate a program seriously. And look where they are. They won the conference last year in the Big 12 and made it to the playoff. That could be UNC. UNC could be good again. You just got to make the right hire, and you got to do it in the best interest of your football program, not a group of people, your boosters, or one person, period. You just got to do that, okay? That you're seeing what happens when you do that, okay? Arizona State went through it. They're dealing with it. So let's not have this happen again in college football, okay? Let's not – I would much prefer us to not experience this again in college football. I think we've learned our lesson about hiring ex-NFL head coaches. It does not work out, okay? So, yes, that's my thoughts on this whole Belichick thing. And hopefully this will be the last time we talk about Bill Belichick in college football because I'm frankly getting sick of it. Before we end the show here, we'll do the Bucs 49ers prediction. I'm going to get some water real quick here because there's a lot of views, a lot of energy there in that last segment. So, one last water break here, and then we'll get back to the show. So I'm going to pause here on YouTube, or not pause, but mute here on YouTube. And as we are kind of at this point here towards the end of the show, just making sure nothing's official yet with Belichick, but I wouldn't be surprised if something happens in between, like now, obviously in the end of the week, but we'll see. I don't see anything about him being fired. I haven't seen anything on my phone yet, so I think we should be okay. But, if something breaks, obviously we will be sure to talk about it. Probably won't do anything tomorrow, but definitely follow me on Twitter for any thoughts on current stuff. So any current breaking news. So just make sure you follow over there and make sure to follow on YouTube and Spotify. All right. Buccaneers and 49ers. This will be the 4 o'clock game, I believe. Let me check. Because I know it'll be Jim Nance, Tony Romo, Tracy Wolfson will be there. I believe it is, the 4:25 primetime CBS game. Well, not primetime, but the game of the week, if you will. Tampa, I believe, is a 3.5-point favorite, according to FanDuel. Not a sponsor of the show, by the way, just an asset we use. This game is interesting to me. So Tampa, really since 2019 and starting in 2019, they have not beaten the 49ers at all. None of those games have been very competitive whatsoever. A lot of them have been like 14-plus points winning or 14-plus victories, or at least a 14-plus margin of error or a margin of victory for San Fran. So that'd be very competitive. So hopefully that's the case here, at least for the most part. I know last year was really close, but before that, not so much. I mean, that's just how it works. But not to mention too, they play each other every single year because of the divisional placements. So it kind of sucks because you've had to deal with them every single year, it feels like. But that's what happens when you're a good team. So you have to play the other good teams in the NFL, unlike in college. But still, you're playing them this year because you are playing that division, right? You're playing the NFC West. So you just faced Seattle, but you're playing the folks down in San Francisco. So to break this down a little bit, of course, injuries on both sides. Tampa of Mike Evans and There's some other injury stuff we're watching with like Chris Godwin. I believe he has something going on. Obviously, Bucky Irving is out for another week. I believe San Fran. I believe it will be Mac Jones again, so he'll be your starter. Of course, George Kittle is out. I believe McCaffrey should be ready to go. It looks like, but obviously he's been banged up over the past year or so. But Tampa, at least in this game, the San Francisco-Tampa game, I got some stats here. As we've sort of, gone forward, or at least we're far enough in the year we can use these. So in this game, it's going to be the number 8 and number 6 teams in total offense ranking, okay? So there's that. You also have points per game. This is number 5, Tampa number 7, being San Francisco, and points that you're two of the best offenses in the country, in the NFL. But these are also the 22nd, being San Francisco, and the 18th, Tampa, and total yards allowed on defense, which is not good. And in terms of points per game allowed on defense, Tampa's 20th, San Fran's 17th. So both towards the bottom mid-tier in the league. So not really that great defensively in some cases. So you're expecting. So the reason why the expectation here is that this will be somewhat of a high-scoring game, right? And I think the things that could hinge on this game: turnovers, clock management, who can control the ball, I think will win this game. And I think the case here for San Francisco, at least as a Bucs fan, look, Tampa has yet to pull away in a game yet. The closest we got was the Jets game, but again, you saw what everyone remembers what happened, right? The blocked field goal, return for a touchdown, and then you have to go march down the field and kick another field goal to win the game. And you have the Texans game, you had the game last week, and you had the game against Atlanta. So all of Tampa's wins have been close, narrow victories. So much like I said about the Eagles game, this is sort of yet again another example of red light theory, where, like I said, before that game, red light theory is essentially whenever you've probably seen this before, either yourself or others when you're driving. Sometimes folks get a little relaxed when you go at an intersection, you see the light out yellow, but and it changes to red at the last second, but you're going so fast you just keep on going. That's been Tampa through all these games, or it's you barely just run a red light, no cop around you, no state trooper or anything like that. You don't get caught. But they got caught, unfortunately, as a Bucs fan, during the game against the Eagles, right? They finally got caught. They lost. They didn't last week, so they got lucky again. Do you get caught this week? Maybe. I mean, I have a lot of respect for Kyle Shanahan now. Of course, there's been a lot of speculation about Kyle and his future with 49ers. I'm not getting into that here. Obviously, I don't cover that team, but just a lot of baseless rumors out there about his future and could he potentially move on to a different team. I'm not buying that. It's too early really to really say that's actually true or not. And some of it's honestly baseless, so it's not real, okay? But yeah, that is interesting. And not to mention the secondary for Tampa, of course, has been pretty poor so far, and I've been vocal about it so far this year. Hasn't been tested at least a whole lot, though it was tested a little bit. Of course, in the Texans game, it was tested a little bit against the Falcons, and it was certainly tested last week against Seattle. And they've been exposed in that spot, so that's obviously a weak point. Can San Francisco do that? Can they hit the big Can they hit the big explosive pass play? I think they can. I mean, you lose George Kittle, your receiving core is kind of is what it is. I mean, look, Ricky Pearsall from UF and Bill Napier guy, even though it was a transfer, pretty good, good receiver. I mean, he's not a big guy. He's, 6'1", I believe, 6 foot, I think. I don't even know if he's even that tall, but, decent receivers. That's someone to keep an eye on for your Tampa. But in terms of predicting this game here, at some point, streaks have to come to an end. Whether it's Tampa in these close games or Tampa losing to the 49ers. At some point, it's got to end, right? You lost to them last year at home. It was a close game. You've lost to them every single time, basically this decade, and going back to the last one in the 2010s. It's got to end at some point, right? The streak has got to end for the Bucs versus the 49ers, that losing streak. But again, like I just also mentioned, the streak of these close games and winning them also has to end at some point, right? It's the NFL. You're going to lose a lot of games at some point. Doesn't end here. I think a streak will end, but it's not the Bucs losing in close games. Or at least winning in close games. Excuse me. I believe the Bucs will end the losing streak to the 49ers. I think they will finally do it. I think they the time is right. Even with the injuries, I think you still trust Ibuka. I think you still trust the receiving core to a certain extent. You also still trust your running backs, Sean Tucker and Rashard White, as long as they're good and healthy. I think they're still fairly good. I think of San Francisco, where I do agree with a lot, though, because they are a little bit older. A lot of those guys are sort of on the verge of either on the verge of their contract expiring or even just flat out retiring. It's an older team, but I still respect them. I just feel like Tampa's going to continue to win and these close games. So I think they win. I think they cover slightly, but it's not that much. It's only -3. So by the way, Tampa, their next game is against Detroit on Monday Night Football, and that is a game I am very concerned about. So we'll touch on that when the time comes. But there is that. Okay, so of course we'll be back on Tuesday, normal time. So we'll see about the recap reaction show that we usually do Saturday night, early Sunday morning. But given the circumstances, we may not be able to do it this week or next week. So it just depends on which one it is. I'll let you know beforehand. Probably not this week, but we'll see. But so until Tuesday, more than likely, enjoy the games this weekend. Enjoy the rest of your week. Take care of yourselves and each other. And of course, we'll see you on the next stream.